Alright, we're on video for capital budgeting. And as I mentioned in class, capital budgeting is the process by which companies decide which projects that are brought forward by their various divisions should get funded or not. And obviously, since we're in a finance class, we're going to look at this from the standpoint of the financial returns, return on investment, things of that sort, rather than anything that would be related to the strategic value or tightening their relationship with their supply channels or their customers. All of these are relevant reasons and may overcome the financial parameters. However, we're going to stick to finance and look at the nuts and bolts of some financial analysis. All right, so first let's look at the objectives. We're going to look at capital budgeting basics just to familiarize ourselves with the process and the types of things that we're likely to see. Then as far as methodology, we're going to see all types of tools today. We're going to look at net present value, the internal rate of return, the modified internal rate of return, the profitability index, payback, and discounted payback. Then look at some complications that are common in real life, such as unequal lives of different projects. And finally looking at the economic life versus the physical life of certain assets. So we have a lot of work to do in this particular module, and we'll be going through quite a few examples in Excel. So the comic on this particular chapter is, I need a budget estimate for my project. I don't have a scope or a design for it yet. Okay, my estimate is $3,583,729. You don't know anything about my project. Well, that makes the two of us. So this is a famous comic strip called Dilbert. You may have seen these before, and it shows kind of some ludicrous aspects of corporate life. Capital budgeting is certainly one of those. So we've seen these types of flowcharts before, but the difference here is we're now at a project level, whereas before we were doing valuations of stock or valuation of operations. Here we're doing the valuation of a project. Again, the format is always very similar. The CFs here are from the project themselves. The denominator is 1 plus R. R is simply the risk-adjusted cost of capital. Now this may be the WACC of the company, or it could be an adjusted rate based on the risk of that particular division or that particular project. We mentioned this a bit when we were looking at WACC, but now we're in the module or the chapter which utilizes project-based rates of return. Budgeting basics. So what is a capital budget? They're potential projects where they've been brought forward by management or perhaps staff, and these are some of the most important decisions that companies make. So it involves a lot of senior management contemplation and consideration because it deals with the strategy of the company, it deals with near-term profitability, it deals with large amounts of money, and really can dictate the future of a company. Mistakes made on where people put their money and management time often is a you bet your company type of scenario. So one of the major demarcations in terms of consideration is it mutually exclusive or independent? Now this just sounds like words for now, but they're quite important. Independent means if you have 5 projects, that means you could do each of the 5 or any of the 5 individually or collective because they don't rely on each other. Mutually exclusive means you may have an objective and you have 2 projects that are alternative ways to deal with that particular opportunity. So you have project A, and if you do A, then you can't do B. If you do B, you can't do A. So that's what we mean by mutually exclusive. As opposed to the earlier one, you could do A or B or A and B. It doesn't matter since they are independent. So the steps that we'll use in capital budgeting, first we'll estimate the cash flows, surprise, surprise, and we'll look at them again being very careful on the sign. Is it a positive inflow or is it a negative outflow? Then we'll look at the risk of the cash flows, and that determines the rate. And it could be WACC for a project, or it could be an adjusted rate of return. Then we'll do evaluation of cash flows. This step number 4 is pretty vague because we're going to use different tools to do the evaluation. Some are based on time value of money using NPV and IRR. Others are just plain old cash, such as payback method. So we'll look at those, and these are all used pretty commonly in practice. So let's try it out. So first we have 2 projects, L and S. L is kind of a long-term waiting for your money, and S is a short-term, you're getting your money faster. So if we look at the cash flows, they both start with a negative 100 at time 0, as in today. L has 10, then 60, then 80, so you have to wait longer for your money. And S is 70, 50, and 20, so you get your money sooner. I guess it could be sooner or later too. And which project is more profitable? Their cash flow patterns, as you can see from this graph, are quite different. Let's start things very slowly and let's look at the cash flows. When we go to Excel, we can see that plain old cash, we'd say, well, it equals the sum of 100 out to 80. So the first one makes us $50, and the second one makes us $40. So on that basis, this doesn't look too good. This is only $40. This looks better because it makes us more money, right? So on this basis, we might say, well, this is pretty easy. We'll rather have $50 versus $40. However, you're smart enough to know that we have to consider time value of money. So let's go back to our slide deck and just build our story.